Howdy everyone. Today we're going to talk about the exhilarating subject of plows, particularly case plows. Um, there are a lot of models that we can go over, and apparently I decided to pick a somewhat difficult one, but I thought it was an interesting one that we could all dive into. So let's begin here. So we're going to be looking at the S series model of plow. Um, so SRA and STA semi-mounted, independent hydraulic control of tailwheel, high 27-inch underbeam clearance. SRA is shear bolt trip beams, 4 and 5 bottoms. The STA is spring trip beams, 3, 4, and 5 bottoms. They fit eagle hitch and category 1 and 2 hitches. So that's pulled from the literature. Uh, these are, yeah, well, they're quasi semi-mounted plows. They do use all three linkages, both lifting arms and the top link, as well as a rear hydraulic cylinder to control the depth of the back tail wheel. The tail wheel is not direction controlled by the front of the plow. It is kind of freewheeling back there. It does have a locking function, so when you drop it down into its lowered position, it should lock for easy backing into sheds, at least that's what they claim, as well as keeping it nice and straight in the furrow. So these plows, again, fit Eagle Hitch in Category 1 or Category 2. The Eagle Hitch in Category 1 are basically the same dimensions, so that takes care of that section. If you were going to use Category 2, a different lower draft bar would have to be furnished with a wider stance for the lower lift links and larger pins, which are the Category 2 style. These plows kind of have a bad rap, and I don't know if it's strictly warranted. I believe that if you read the manual and understood it and used it as the manual said, it would actually work very well out plowing in the field. I would assume you could get all the traditional bottoms on it, your slat bottoms, or if you had GX sod bottoms, those all could be on there. I'm not sure if you could get the older CX blacksmith shares on it. Those are the ones with the longer snouts. Most of the ones that are probably all the ones I've ever seen are the EX style, so they are the stubby throwaway shares that were non-repointable. So in these pictures here, it looks like we've got a 500 series 500B or 600B Rock Island tractor with the 36-inch rubber that's pulling it, and it has Eagle Hitch on it. These are obviously artist renditions, so not the most accurate. So here is a good side view. We've got a case cylinder on there controlling that tail wheel, and we've got our front draft bar and mast. So one thing to note is this does have the pivoting function up front. However, it is not as far pivoting as a traditional semi-mount plow would be. And there are stops, I believe, if they're similar to the other case models. I don't have one here to actually look at, but there are stops in there, so you can set your offset for the draft bar, how far left and right you need to be, and then it will clamp back down, and it will pivot when you come to the headlands and you're turning around. Plus you have that tail wheel. If we look at the mast, where the top link mounts, we got that rod that goes back, and that rod is free floating in the bulkhead, I guess we'll call it there, so that it can float a little bit as it's going through the field. In addition to that, we also have the remote cylinder on the back controlling the tail wheel, which would help control your depth to some extent. And I think this is where farmers had an issue with operating this plow, because we have the float function on the top link mast. We also have to control the top link itself, and we have to control the rear remote cylinder. So there's a lot going on here to get consistent depth of plowing and something that penetrates and gets to depth easily and quickly. Um, we can also see here that this plow frame is a trip beam, or yeah, a trip beam, so it's got springs in there. We can see the bolts and the trip assemblies poking up. So in theory, if you hit a stone or obstruction out in the field, it would trip it back, clear the obstruction, and then spring back to where it needed to be. So this is probably the more expensive, higher end version that you would get if you were in stony country. If you're going for the cheaper version, or you didn't have a lot of obstructions that you planned on running into, you would get the shear bolt version, and that would trip. All right, so we got some scenes here of some different S-Series plows in action. Uh, in the upper left, we've got an S-Series plow. Looks like it's on with the square seat. I'm going to say that's probably a 700 or 800B series, or yeah, that one's going to be a 700, 800, maybe an early 730 or 830. I'm not really sure there. On the upper right, we've got another Rock Island. It's either a 630 or a 600 or a 500B with the 36-inch rubber. 600B is the Case Rock Island tractor. The 600 is Case-O-Matic, so it's got a torque converter, which would probably be pretty nice for plowing. You would probably be in direct drive most of the time when you're plowing, especially with that forebottom, and then if you hit a tough spot, you'd flip it down into torque converter to power through it until you got past it and you'd flip it back up. 500B would be the gear drive version of the 600, so you would not have torque converter. You would just select your gear and go with it. If you had a 630, it's going to be basically the same thing as a 500 or 600, but I believe you got the diesel as an option, and you could get it as either a torque converter or a standard gear drive. I think the 500 and 600 basically got combined into the 630. Lower left picture here, we've got, I would say that is a 400 pulling that. Looks like a 5 bottom Model S plow. And it's kind of hard to see. He's got some leveling to do with this plow, but it's his first pass as well. So maybe he has it set for the next pass when he's going to be plowing in the furrow, but it looks like it's leaning too far to the left for traditional plowing. And then on the lower right, we've got another Rock Island 400, 500, 600, or 630. And we can see that spring trip action going on there. All right, so now we've got a front and rear view of this model plow. We can see the draft bar here. We can kind of see that big U assembly that. So again, we can adjust the offset of that lower draft bar left or right, depending on what the offset of our tires and our tractor's setup is. And that big U section up there that clamps to it is our pivot point. And we can, I believe, move the bolt around to change based on how many bottoms we are using. You'll notice that on these Case plows, one side of the lower draft bar is down. That's to kind of get you in a more optimal operating zone for plowing in the furrows. On the right, we can see there is an optional lighting kit that probably no one has anymore, or it's just sitting up in the barn someplace. And we can see that on some of these, I mean, all of the bottoms were offered different ways, but a common one was to have the double bolt holes punched in the moldboard for moldboard extensions. So, and if you guys have any Case moldboard extensions out there, do not throw them away because they are not being made anymore and are fairly rare. John Deere ones will work, but I'm guessing at some point John Deere will also stop making those, and then we're just going to be out of luck. So, on the left picture of the front picture, I would consider those plowshares to be stub guards or stone plowshares that I guess if you're in a stony condition, aren't going to break the tips off as easily as you're going through the ground. But I do believe they have a higher resistance going through the ground and aren't as great at penetrating in um, hard packed conditions or dry ground. We got another side picture here. As you can see, you need a fair amount of hose depending on the number of bottoms to get back to that back cylinder. Those case cylinders are unique. They've got kind of an interesting spring-loaded depth lock setting on it. You get, I believe, 3 or 4 pre-loaded settings. You hit that spring safety latch and you're able to move a collar forward and backwards on the cylinder to kind of select your depth. If you're familiar with the IH plow cylinders or implement cylinders, they used a variable, it's like a wing nut clamp on there. You can basically slide it up and down as much as you want on the 8-inch stroke. This one does not give you as much flexibility as the International, but they're still good and reliable, and they're fairly easy to rebuild. So I believe there are 2 different sizes of case cylinders, so if you're working on one of those for a project like this, just keep that in mind. They do have 2 sizes. On the top picture, we can see the optional depth wheel. Those are kind of hard to find. If you find those, try and glom onto them. They are nice to have on your plow. They are not there, manual even states this, they're not there to ride 100% of the time. They are there to help get you through soft spots. So if you hit a sandy spot and the plow sinks down more than it should, that depth wheel needs to be set to save you. With those depth gauge wheels, you can put, they're just standard 3-bolt plow implement wheels. And you can put a steel wheel on there, you can put a pneumatic, so let me rephrase that. Some of them are 3-bolt. They did go later on, I believe, to a 5-bolt. So you just have to keep that in mind. Let's see here, lower picture, all case plows till a certain point, I believe, came with the case logo painted on the front because the moldboards were covered over with plow paint or some kind of paint just to keep them from rusting. All right, so let's move on to kind of an interesting thing. If you had a MTA model plow, for a while they offered a semi-mount kit for it, and as you can see from this picture, it basically just turned it into a Model S plow. There isn't much difference that I can tell. It's kind of hard to find information on this. I've only seen a few brochures that had this information, but yeah, they didn't really reinvent the wheel here. They just converted a Model MTA over to a Model S. I don't know how many of these got sold. I'm not sure how you would tell the difference in the wild between an MTA and a Model S. I think there may be some different lower draft bar components up there because I think you could you could manually lock in where that lower draft bar was at to change the offset on your plow. So, but yeah, I don't know. I would need a lot of, I need some assurance that that was an MTA plow with the semi-mount kit to probably tell that in real life. But if you know anything else about this MTA semi-mount kit, please, let us know in the discussions. If you know any more information, or you have any good stories about these Model S plows, maybe some nuanced information that the rest of us aren't privy to, please, let us know. It's always interesting to learn some history behind these machines and, the people that used them and all that. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this kind of light overview of case plows. Hoping to do some more in the future. Maybe we'll do a BER series, Eagle Hitch Plow, on the next one. Maybe you'll find some other implements that we can go over, even tractors. But all right, well, thank you again for taking a look at this, and we'll leave you to it.